Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack 4 Business Podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack 4 business truly is?
Today's topic is aligning operations with core values. Your hosts are Bernie Fransbrook from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc. So, what can you expect from the Knack for Business podcast? We aim to help you find your feet in the business world, whether you're just starting out or you've been at it for a while. We have something for everyone. In each episode, they dive deep into a particular area of business and explore the ins and outs of that subject. They interview guests that are experts in their field who share their success stories and their experiences. They offer practical tips and advice. Our guest today is Sierra Ashburn from Amplified Innovation. Sierra is a virtual operations strategist and integrator and the passionate founder of Amplified Innovation, an operations company that partners impact-driven organizations. Sierra and her team partner with founders to craft a holistic strategic plan and operations foundation to honor the essence of who they are and their vision for business and overall lifestyle. In addition to being an operations strategist, Sierra is a mom of 5 kiddos and runs a small farm in Tennessee. Sierra, welcome. It's really good to have you here today. You have a favorite quote or saying?
Thank you. So excited to be here. My favorite quote for this season, it's very much lean in and be present and letting that kind of guide my relationships, business, things with the kids, all of the above. Just lean in and be present.
What brought you into the amplified innovation concept? What brought you to that doorstep?
I was in the world of administrative support, and that allowed me an opportunity to help a lot of founders with the doing. There's so much on a founder's plate of how do we get things done and all of that. But then I quickly realized there was a clear need for operations. Yes, the doing is needed, but having a plan in place ensures leaders don't spin their wheels out. So that very much led me, okay, ops is my zone of genius. I can see these gaps. I can map out plans for solutions and go from there. And that was my leading point of there's more than just admin needed here. How do we meet business owners where they are, get them a plan in place so they're not spinning out, and help them do more good?
How long have you been at this?
So a little over 5 years ago, we're almost at the 6-year mark for Amplified being official admin stuff several years before that in different roles and variations.
Tell me, Sierra, what do you think the core values are of a business operation?
I think the core values are very much customized and they're the heart of the organization as a whole. That's like the starting point, right? Because core values is foundational. And the next step is operations being foundation into how the business runs, and ensuring both of those align is super important. And I think when you use the core values, it's a compass for the groundwork phase and the guide during the growth. It helps with the clarity. When you're not sure where to begin or things move too fast, it's like, how do we go back to this? Does this align with XYZ values? Does it allow us to operate with intention of considering how do we ensure X value that's customized to that organization is honored in each process we build out, whether that be hiring, team meetings, project management, all of the above. Like, how does this intertwine with each other?
Use the term holistic and to honor the business and the founder's personal vision. What do you mean by that? How does that take shape and how do you form that?
Holistic in the sense of the whole person and the whole organization, right? Yes, business is important. Yes, business is going to let us get things done. Yes, business is going to make money. Yes, business is going to make impact. And we're all out here doing a lot of good things across the board. But it's how do we feel along the way? How's the person feeling? What do they really enjoy doing? And getting really transparent and raw in the conversations lets us be able to take that holistic piece and the founder's vision, seeing them as the whole person first. And we're holistic in the sense of that it's not a one size fits all approach, right? It's very customized to where that organization is, where that founder is, and where they want their team to be, whether it's already in place or coming to be in place. My goal in every conversation is really just to hear, to understand and learn the founder's story and what they envision and how they want this to feel. That gives me enough framework to understand and really get it, right? What their challenges have been, what have motivated them into business, what they want different, right? Because most likely they started business and left corporate for a lot of different reasons. They want it to feel different, whether that's family time or personal breathing space. How do we incorporate all of those pieces into how the business operates and flows? There's an aligned operations and day-to-day piece that they can come back to that feels good with what they want, not just the business goals.
You want them to bring out a vision. I'm assuming to make it work and to make it connect, that's more than a 20 by 24 poster in the break room. Can you tell
Right.
me how you get them to articulate and emanate that vision to the client and other staff?
Depending upon where the founder is in their own journey. A lot of founders we work with are doing self work in terms of therapy with coaches. They are being intentional with their lives. And that allows an opportunity for more conversation. But everybody's at different stages. But I'm upfront that we keep it simple, we stay present, but we're going to dig into this. And it might be hard and heavy. And I'm going to ask you real questions as to what do you like? What do you not like? Let's get very honest, not just give me a sugar coated answer. I want the real guts of the story of how are you feeling on a day-to-day basis with this process? Or how are you feeling with how you want to run your team? What feels ick and how do we do it? What do we do about that? So I'm just very upfront and transparent as well. And that builds trust and it takes some conversation and we stay in it. We all come in with conditioning, whether intentional or unintentional. We have different conditioning and narratives that we're carrying into business. It is not an overnight fix. We have to remain intentional. Yes, the initial conversation, but how do we keep looking at that? Because and reminding them to see themselves as a whole person, right? Along the way. And that's how we do it differently. It's not just the business, but it's the people, starting with the founder. And then it runs in with the team, right? That leads to team alignment. Being forthcoming with the recruiting, onboarding, and leading with core values and examples of how that's integrated with the organization. That's going to allow the founder to lead from that space. And it's going to allow other people as they're bringing in and growing their team to see how the core values live out in the founder's life and the team organization and give them a choice as to, is this for them? Does this make sense? And it serves as an accountability piece, I think, for the founder and the team. It's upfront, right? There's no secrets. It's just out there. This is how we operate.
Does matter?
I think there's a lot of solopreneurs that we work with at the very beginning. The conditioning, the narratives, the intention of how they want to do it different is very real, even in the solopreneur stage. And oftentimes we also know we have serialpreneurs where they're in multiple different things. And I think that applies too of how they're conducting business, how they're partnering, how they're expanding into new things, because there's a piece of operations of how you operate on a day-to-day basis where even if you're in multiple small ventures and you're independent in most of those or in a partnership, how you're showing up, how you're running your day to day, how you're operating is going to play into that. So I think small and then large, it just looks different in terms of when you're in larger teams of how many more steps, who are the decision makers, how many's on leadership, right? Like you get into those pieces, but the framework can still be customized. It can still be seen as the whole person. It just may take a lot more meetings and a lot more coming together and really narrowing down what does that look like.
It's about viewing yourself as a person in the process of business. And you can see two sides of the coin in this. One, you're a person, so understand things will never be perfect. At the same time, you have to also push out and going, it's the business. And it's almost like its own entity, except it comes from you. How do you sort it out without the person goes, you explain to the person, you're going to make mistakes. So you get past that part. It's how
Mhm.
you recover from them. The business is yours, but it's not
Yeah.
because it's got to, how do you sort that out?
I think that's where the narrative shift comes in even more when they're in the business and working on things day to day, especially before the team is doing things. That is the conversation where remembering that they are a whole person and that it's starting to guide them that the business exists. The business has its own priorities, but not to self sacrifice. How do we do this? How do we make impact? How do we grow without self sacrifice? And having that common knowledge as a framework in the day to day operation of being able to separate. Hey, and that's part of it, right? Like take a breather, right? Block your day for your personal time. The business is still going to be here and you can meet these goals when you took a vacation, when you took a break, when you breathe throughout the day. That might help you show up to that next meeting. It naturally intertwines when we're talking about the person part to let the business start to shine as its own. That kind of builds out because that natural separation occurs where you're prioritizing also gives you the best foot forward to prioritize the business. It grows further into that as you start to delegate. You're honoring who you are and you're honoring the needs of the business. So it's a twofold situation, but that's easier to see once you cleared out the weeds a little bit of giving some capacity and cleared some initial things out. Delegation becomes a lot easier because you have the process and the foundation of things written out. You're not just delegating, on a whim. You're like, okay, I prioritize myself. I have taken breaks. I've taken the things that live in my head. I've written them down. They align with the core values of like how I want. And now I can feel comfortable to trust someone. Then the business becomes more than just you and more than just the business. It becomes the people that you're adding to the team.
Part of what I'm hearing is that you help businesses get aligned. So one thing that is an obvious question is, what does a misaligned business look like?
It can look different depending upon the stage of business they're in. And I think sometimes you get some unique like situations that can vary. And I think keeping an eye out for that. But one of the biggest things the founder is max, right? And that's why I said this can exist for just solopreneurs. They're not breathing. They don't have their time off. They're wearing far too many hats. They're really out of their zone of genius. And it's hurting them and the business at this point. Those are major signs. But also when you have the team aspect, communication breakdown due to a lack of clarity. And are people searching for things, right? Because documentation was possibly skipped. Did we get out of the habit, out of the intentional effort? How are we documenting? How are we checking in? Did we get too wrapped up in the business flow? Because it happens that we're not communicating as a team, that the project manager doesn't have what they need from the team members, but really the project manager didn't properly communicate because the founder didn't. The founder thought they did, but it lived in their head because they're too busy taking on a task that was supposed to be delegated that they won't release. And they may have got really good at releasing, but something came up. New project, new partner, they pulled themselves back in. When you start seeing people step out of the place that has been defined well by those core values with intention based on everyone's zone of genius, and they're jumping over, when you're seeing burnout, when you're seeing the communication pieces, and that people are searching because something's not documented where it's supposed to be. Those are big signs that something is out of place, out of alignment.
Can't mention names, obviously, unless it was a win. If it's a success, everyone loves talking about it. But can you walk me through an example of how you took someone from misaligned to aligned?
Recently, I had a couple strategy sessions with a particular client, and initially it was those basics like how do we, get some things off the plate? How do we get clarity? How do we get to the core value piece? And then the second session was more aligned with the offers and how she was showing up for clients and how she was rebranding and her offers and how she wanted that to match because she was overcommitting. She felt hung up with the situation. She was in it. She wanted to honor the commitment, but it didn't feel good for her. The offerings didn't match how she wanted to show up in her professional expertise and grow with these clients. It was putting her in a position where I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm not giving them the very best. I feel like we're not set up. So we reframed her offer to align with the core values of her and the business so she could start offering in a different type of way so clients could see her in the realm of which she really wanted to be represented and grow to their highest potential. Each moving part made sense and it matched up.
You find as you're having somebody coming in age 20, age 50, and you're starting up a business, sometimes you have your own bias. I've always done it this way. It's always worked. I don't like using new tech, or whatever the case might be. I have to advertise on TikTok. Really? That type of. How do you reshape that? Not reshape, reframe it for them to get past. Is there a process where you're going, hey, listen, you're doing good, but this is going to hold you back? Do you work
Yes.
on that?
Yes. I think a lot of founders that we end up working with have their way of doing it. It's worked for them, but they have an inkling. This might not be sustainable. This isn't working at the level I want it to, or I'm self sacrificing in the process. They just don't know how to get there. So it's unpacking all of that and ensuring. And I think that goes back to the work of like, where are they plugged in with a coach, with a therapist on the other side of it? We can do the narrative, discussion. We get real and raw in the conversation and we do the integration. And I always support finding someone else to work with to really shift those patterns if they're wanting to do it. Some business owners, regardless of their age, they like the way they do it. It's yes, I can present to them the benefit. And sometimes it works. Sometimes they're like, okay, I'm open to this. Usually I'm most successful with that. I still do the same process, right? I still get raw and transparent with them. I still understand them. I have deep understanding for why they do it the way they do it and how they got there. And that alone creates a foundation of trust. So that's always my starting point, regardless of how the results work out. I want to see and hear them, regardless of where they are as a business owner or what their experience has been. Like it's all of value and it all is important and they are important and their story is important. Understanding that, usually I can pull from there. Okay, you've done it this way. I see and hear it. If it's a tech piece, this tech piece is needed because you are spending so much time doing this, right? It's the appeal of like if time is their thing and they want it back, how do we present tech as a way? How do we empower them? How do we get over the threshold of the intimidation that tech has? Or how do we find a person that runs the tech for them so they don't ever have to touch it, but it lives and exists and benefits them? Like it's the power of I hear you and you don't want to do it and you don't feel confident doing it. Do you want to get confident doing it? Or do we want to find someone who is overconfident in doing it and let them help you so you can stay in your lane and let them stay in theirs? And it's a very actionable step in that case. I feel like that's a very tangible. I have to bring the connection in. But first and foremost, it's still the same. I have to get to know them and understand why they are the way that they are and what their experience has been to bring them there.
You mentioned that you run a farm.
Mhm.
Has the organic process of the farm influenced your business?
I think for me, I have always wanted to do many things when I grow up, and I still want to do many things when I grow up. And the farm has always been one of those since I was very little, like elementary school age. That was something I knew I wanted to be on a farm. Wasn't born on one. I just got here as fast as I could. And I love it. I love the intentional pace of it, the trust on the other side of it. It empowers me to pause more. It empowers me both in business, both in my relationships of it just reminds me of the trust, the communication. It brings me back to relationships. I feel like that's the biggest thing I've learned since being on the public side with the farm of selling products. It's the same as when I started Amplified Operations. It's all relationships. And I think they play into each other and they both fill up a cup for me in different types of ways. As a business owner, as a founder, as someone that needs to do a lot of different things, it does the job. And I think it gives me a different type of reference point of the reminder of there's so many other factors we don't have control over. And farming has that piece of it.
Here to list off the top three things that people do that, they're the mistakes and it's just built in. It's like hitting the pothole in the road. You're going down a countryside road and you're not paying attention and it just hit her, right? It's, you feel your suspension going, that's not so good. What are the typical pitfalls you find that businesses will encounter that it shows up time and time again?
I think the mindset that we have to do it all ourselves gets in our way initially, and it shows back up. It's a constant work in progress of how we remind ourselves we could ask for help. So I think that shows up often. I think the other piece is from the ops standpoint, this is definitely an ops thing versus specific to humans as a whole. But someone who's not ops minded is not going to think of this. And so that's why I just tell people over and over they skip it. They skip it, right? Instead of writing it down, they just run through the motions because their focus is the business. How do we get this done? How do we deliver? Versus really documenting what you're doing, how you're doing it, what's working, what do you like, what do you not like, what is your customer like? And that's a skip. And that could be on smaller levels or it could be on bigger levels. It could be consistent where you're doing it over and over in that same process or in different processes throughout the operation. And I think those can be avoided with the self reminder and surrounding yourself with a team, with people who are also reminding you we're on the same page, we have the same goal. And I think that goes back to the relationship benefit. The other piece is having a system in place. When we're starting a new process, when something needs coming up, that there's someone on the team, probably operation, where it's, hey, this is happening. What do we do with it? Because whoever's doing the action, if it's, a project manager or whatever, if they're not fully operations minded, if it's an admin, it's, hey, they notice this is new, but that's not their job to build out the process for it. It's not their job to document it in a way that's going to be a training level material. I think that's a big piece of it. But how do we kick it back to the person who is responsible, who can develop an SOP, who can create videos for us all to know how to do it and bridge that gap so that we're not skipping through? Are we going over this quarterly? Are we going over annually? What is the plan in place? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated, but just the reminder of, hey, stop, pause, reflect.
Stop, pause, and reflect. I like that. One of the things that you do is helping businesses scale. I assume if they're a technician and they're selling, you're more helpful if they're growing. Do you find that you have to point out where they might be weak in accounting or what legal help they might be getting? Or tell me about how you look at the 30,000-foot view.
Sure. When I do strategic planning on the front end, that's something we cover. Usually I'm getting a business owner in a conversation where this is the most transparent they have been. What naturally happens is a little bit of everything comes out, and it's usually not operations related. Yes, the gaps are coming out of, oh, there's not invoicing in place, or the invoicing is manual still, or the contract hasn't been reviewed by an attorney. We're going to add that straight into the plan. I capture what comes up, right? What do they want in the contract? How old is the contract? When was it last reviewed? All of that. And then I recommend it in the strategic plan of the next 90 days, contacting an attorney. Here are some recommendations for review over this contract and capturing what they have in that meeting so that they can very easily, we're not involved in the implementation of that 90-day plan that I create for them. So many business owners have not taken action because they've just not thought about it. They've not put it into words. What do I say? What do I ask for? What do I need? They hinder themselves by not asking for help because they don't know what they need. So they don't know how to verbalize it. I take that opportunity that when they have verbalized it and remind them, hey, send this straight over to this attorney. Here's a few different options of who may be aligned with you based upon where you are in business. Here's their information, and try to make it as easy and simple as possible. If I am in the business where I am on the day-to-day operations for them, I believe operation is a facilitator for many things. You are the one communicating with the attorney, bookkeeper, financial strategist, social media, whoever it may be, to be sure everybody's getting what they need. The founder gets what they need from all those people. And when a new relationship needs to be established, a lot of times there is the heaviness of, I just don't need one more thing on my plate. As a founder, I don't need one more thing on my plate. So they just don't do it because it's going to require them to have to people, to have to communicate, to have to get. And so if we are in the business with a founder, we take on that. We'll talk to the attorney, establish the relationship, get them everything they need. When the founder wants to show up and connect, they can do that part without the work and then feel connected to their person. They feel supported, and we feel in that middle of, does everybody have what they need? So that's definitely, yes, it comes up often where I'm like, we don't do X or Y or Z, but I can get you to here, and here's what I recommend. It's very often that the full picture reveals gaps in other areas. I try to keep my professional network wide so I have enough people to reference and enough information to identify, okay, this is a financial need, this is an attorney need, this is both, and you're going to need both.
Do you help them plan? I've met many entrepreneurs that are very seat in the pants. Do you help them look at multi-year planning in both budgeting and marketing?
Yes, we can look ahead and how does this grow when it comes to marketing specifics and when it comes to financial specifics. If we have that information, so they have a marketing strategist, they have the financial, we can integrate that into the planning, right? If they bring that information, I can base operations with the inclusivity of those factors into it. I personally am not a numbers person, but I can implement it into what's going to happen. And then I'm not marketing either, but I've worked with a lot of wonderful ones. I can get detailed to the level of if a marketing plan is in place, but they want someone on the team to execute, I can help create training materials and a plan of what does that look like for you to have internal social media? What is that role? How do we recruit for it? How do we get them in place so that you can own the marketing, own the social media internal if that's their goal? Different things like that. Or if it really does make sense to remain outsourced for that. Someone you want to manage within your team, you want them to have the independent autonomy over it. And depending on the direction of what does that look like in the next 1 to 3 years of making sense for where they want their team to go and who they want on it versus who makes sense as a partnered, like outsource partner.
You mentioned that you came in your career from the administration side and you looked at the business and went, your problem is not administration. I think that's awesome. I'm more interested in how you got to the second one when you realized that this was your area of genius. This, but it's that.
I was in a particular role where I grew really fast with the company as virtual assistant and then project manager. I was working with clients hands on in terms of signing their contracts and onboarding. I was involved in those first face to face meetings. And that's where it started for me. I could see the vision, hear them. And I love that part of it. Of I can sit down, have lunch with them. I'm a foodie, so it's yes. I can have lunch with you and hear about your problems and come up with a way to fix them. And you leave so relieved and happy. And I feel filled up by this. What I know now is a sacred. It was like a full body yes of this is it. I love this. I love the idea that I could sit down and have one conversation. They dump all their problems. I'm excellent at responding. You prompt me and I'm like, okay, and I can see it. And they're just like, oh wow. And they leave that table with so much relief. If I can help them do that, that will give them more capacity to go do the good that they're doing in the world. And that's what I want to do. I want to help those that are doing good do more of the good with less sacrifice because you can do that. We're all here to help you and I can help with this. So it was very much a heartfelt, blessed opportunity in that regard. And I realized in those experiences and others, I wanted to do it with a level of intention. How do we do this in a way that we're not causing harm to the owner, the founder, the team? How do we do this in a non-toxic way? So everyone gets to shine, that collaboration is the foundation of how this all comes together. And everyone contributing in their zone of genius without getting wrapped up in a toxic dialogue that sometimes lives in corporate and that sort of thing.
You mentioned earlier, you know, are you doing your receipts manually versus automated? Do you have a kind of a review process going? Is everything you're doing manually, even if you're using electronic devices, you look at ways to take the laborious rinse and repeat cycle and move it to a software platform? Is there an ideal platform that you like working with or that you recommend for people to work with?
We try to keep that customized. We'll do the audit, go through what you have in existence, what is working, what are you using that you're paying for, even from the high level of are you spending money on something you've not touched and don't know how to use it, have no intention of using? Do you really like it, but just don't know how to use it? Figure out where they are in that process and then eliminating what doesn't need to be in place, right? It doesn't need a replacement. It never need to exist at all. Because I think, again, we're told things. We're told you need this, you need that, do this, do that. And we do it. And unknowingly, you trust the source. And maybe that person really needed it, but that wasn't customized to your business and where you were. And you just picked up, or you thought it was cool because you're a tech person, but not really a tech person. You like shiny object tech, but not, I'm going to use the tech. That's fair. It's real. It's more about learning what is the learning style and communication style and how does their brain retain information. So I had one client that we worked with for a while where he was an attorney. This was in a previous position, but he did the quadrant like thinking. So everything was in quadrants. So his daily reminders were in quadrants. So little things like that. Are they a visual person? Are they a list person? Do they need to be reminded? Is there a system? Is there a process? If they are going to be the main user or one of the primary users and remain that way in a system and in a process, how do we find something that's going to fit for them? And going through that. So we remain open to new tech. We go back to if it's Monday.com or if it's Asana, just depending on where the person is, but that's very customized in terms of what they think. But there's times they've used it for years and they hate it. But they didn't say that they hated it. I'm like, well, let's change it. You don't have to keep hating it. It's going to be okay.
Many of the entrepreneurs I met are full out until they burn out.
Yeah.
If you see they're on that path, how do you get them to reshape their day or their week?
I really try to get them to hear and see themselves. It doesn't have to be this way. You can do this and this business will run and thrive and get them to see that their impact is really stronger when they take the break and that it's going to be okay. It's a process sometimes. It is a really hard process for them to have the trust within themselves, trust in what they've created, trust in the process. Sometimes they have processes, but they still won't step away. They still can't. So it is a lot of conversation and doing trial runs, doing short increments of, hey, step away and see how the day went. And just helping them flip the narrative. There is another opportunity out here and it could take a while. But that's why I also believe in the other supportive. Yes, I'm attached to the actual action. We're going to get stuff done over here, but I'm talking about the narrative. And I think that's what this is. I'm not here just to do the stuff. I am going to talk about you as a person. We are going to talk about the narrative, but you may need deeper work on that narrative piece. If you're carrying, that's the way you've lived your whole life, conditioning from childhood, conditioning from however many years in corporate, whatever the case may be, that's going to be hard to unpack and unravel. I am not certified on that side of things. I can connect it, but having that team, having that support and that reminder of other founders that maybe have done the burnout. They burned out businesses, they burned out themselves, and having that example. So I think there's the benefit of like, how do we within colleagues and group together so that there's different visualization and different representation of each part of the journey and learning from that. And that's what I always encourage of finding a mentor who's got a story similar to yours. Maybe they worked in the same industry before you branched out, even if they're in different businesses now. Where is the commonality and how do we learn from each other in that piece of it? But it's a lot of patience, it's a lot of grace and encouraging them to have grace with themselves because it's not going to be perfect, but it will be okay. If we plug and play the right team to the skill set, you will be supported well and you can thrive without it feeling icky.
You have them work on impact driven goals, which is absolutely huge. Then there is the roadblock of operational strategy. And sometimes it seems they tend to do one or the other better. How do you help them implement their strategy using their goals?
One piece at a time, right? Keeping the high level in mind as the core value. That's the easiest way to keep that at play. Okay, this is the bigger goal. Being sure that we are working on each piece and allowing that to compound throughout the process. If we're working on client onboarding, we keep in mind that it's going to apply, right? There's a lot of things that we can use in client onboarding that we will turn around and use in client offboarding. The same system, the same type of language, it'll dual purpose itself. If we're mindful of the impact as a whole and taking it one piece at a time versus trying to rush it, that's going to save us time from making mistakes. The efficiency shows up in the consistency of how we're documenting. Are we documenting the language we use for client onboarding? Can that be used for other types of marketing? Can that be used in other places and spaces? Efficiency can show up in those ways versus the traditional. We still have to keep the efficiency in mind of running business in real time and improving processes. Being transparent with clients. Hey, we're changing things. Would love your feedback about this. Allows for growth as a whole. You're showing you're growing, investing the time and energy. And yes, you get back to them, but say, hey, I'm going to follow up with this new detailed report. I'd love your feedback. You're capturing feedback without having to do that on the back end, right? You're utilizing the same report you would normally manually type out, but you're giving it to them in customized PDF too. And they get both versions and you get the feedback in real time, not we develop the whole process and then, oh, we're going to ask, what's your opinion of this? We're going to set up a survey. Different things like that can play into the efficiency, core values, and relationship development of what's going on.
You help them with onboarding. That's pretty traditional. You also help them offboard. And that sounded more interesting to me. Tell me when you tell the clients to fire their clients.
In some cases, there's natural growth, right? It outgrows, or maybe they only have an offering where they coach them for X amount of months, but that is not a long-term thing, right? Just like therapy for a season of whatever that may be. Offboarding can look like maybe it was a group client and they were in a coaching, container. That's still an important experience. There are times where, okay, it may be in that case, the case where we redid the offers in that case study I mentioned earlier. There are certain ones she intended on changing the relationship. So I was like, let's present it as you want to do this differently. This is how you're angling. You finish up what you're doing and offer them what feels comfortable in the line based on where they are as a business and what you can provide as a professional. We're still humanizing everything. But there are times where it's not feeling good for you. It is okay to let them go so you can make room for the capacity and they can choose. So it's not always let them go. It's we got to do this differently because this doesn't feel good or match our services. So there are hard conversations where that changes, where a company grows or a client grows of, hey, you're needing XYZ amount of time and we only committed to this, right? You might need somebody internal now. Sometimes it's a professional recommendation that clients need to give, or if it's a coaching situation and they're working with staff, is everyone, this might not be the right coaching. And I think that's where a coach has to get very transparent. It's not always me to recommend, but maybe me to identify. Hey, and if they ask me, if the relationship is at the place where they ask, What are your thoughts? What has been different about this process? I can give them all the details in regard to how it has been operationally working with that client. And then I can identify for them, hey, I saw you felt this way after every meeting, or I keep seeing you trying. You've tried 3 different ways to contact someone and he still won't meet, even though he's a primary person in leadership. Whatever the case may be, I can give the facts and then allow them to make that decision. It's not very often that I'm in a place where I'm like, oh, cancel the client. We're not in that business. But I think there are things that we touch on that naturally result in that, but not in a mean we're firing you.
Do you focus on a specific business sector? Is it bricks and mortar? Is it service based, in person service based businesses, or SaaS, software as a service industry? You are-
Primarily service-based businesses. They could be in person or virtual, but service-based over product-based for sure. Any industry is wide open in that regard. I love tapping into different industries, learning from them, enjoying them, supporting them, whether that be attorneys, accountants, and marketers, like the traditional, as well as like coaches and wellness and practitioners, a wide range nonprofits. I will work with nonprofits. I enjoy that on that piece of it. And that they could be in a various different nonprofit realm. I've done empowerment and self-defense all the way to churches and everything in between. Really just open in terms of the niche, but service-based is typically the realm for that.
Are you national, or are you North American, or are you global?
I have a client in Egypt, between here and Egypt. I'm wide open. I will work with time zones. You're doing good stuff. Let's talk. I want to help you do more good stuff.
That's fantastic.
You have the entrepreneur so they can distill what you said.
Oh, I would say you matter. You are worthy of support. It is my key thing. And if I can help you figure out what that support is, I'd love to. Keep doing good stuff. And if you want to still keep doing it independently, write it down, document yourself, ask yourself how it feels. You don't always have to hire immediately, right? You might not be in that season and that is okay. But write down where you are. Make notes if you like it. If it takes too long, if it takes you longer than you think it would take someone else, mark those things down because that's going to allow you the foundation to be able to delegate and hire and ask for that help that you are so very worthy of, whether it's with an ops person or an independent service provider or a new team member contractor that's a jack or Jill of all trades and is doing a little bit of everything. The more you have, the more comfortable and confident you can feel that person's going to be able to understand and hear you.
Sierra, if this resonates with our listener, how are they get a hold of you?
I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and then my company website is amplifiedinnovation.co.
Let's say thank you to Sierra Ashburn and my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you're looking, geez, things are running rough in the business, in your service-based business, Sierra can service you from anywhere on the globe. To reach us, info@creativeinsight.com, info at KREATIVINSIGHT.com. And the website is creativeinsight.com. Wayne, how can folks reach you, sir?
Best way is my website, motivate the numeral 8, the letter U.ca. And my email is wayne@motivateyou.ca.
If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Javan Strika from At Hive Co-working Space, Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack 4 Business podcast episodes are meant for educational and informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice. The thoughts and opinions expressed by the participants are their own and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area, the hosts, participants, or affiliated groups. Do not take responsibility for any actions taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.